Listen, there is a very specific sound out there that has fundamentally altered how an entire generation experiences music. It doesn't just enter your ears, it actually slows down your heart rate. It quiets your racing thoughts, and it isolates you in this sudden, profound sense of calm. In this explainer, we're unpacking the calculated science, the deep psychology, and the masterful production behind Billie Eilish's voice. It's this fascinating cognitive dissonance, right? We live in an era where the modern music industry is practically defined by an absolute avalanche of noise, high-energy hooks, and just relentless volume. So why does one specific, incredibly quiet voice cut entirely through all of that static? Why does this particular vocal frequency register not just as a catchy piece of pop music, but as a genuine physical sensation? Section 1. The anomaly of her voice. When you actually look at the listener data and all the anecdotal reports surrounding Billie Eilish, millions of people aren't just calling her music catchy, they independently describe it as an auditory anchor. Now, to understand why, you have to look at traditional pop vocals. Usually, they rely heavily on power, they're belted, they command massive space, and they are inherently maximalist. When you listen to a traditional pop anthem, it feels like the singer is up on a huge stage, and you're just a face in the crowd. But Billie's vocals do the exact opposite of that. Think about the vocal delivery in a track like When the Party's Over. It's whispered, it's highly intimate, and it is aggressively minimalist. By stripping away all that typical vocal exaggeration, she essentially removes the metaphorical stage entirely. And we really cannot understate the sheer scale of this anomaly. Millions of listeners, spanning entirely different cultures and age groups, independently report her voice acting as a calming, therapeutic presence in their lives. This isn't just some subjective preference for a music genre, it is a massive, synchronized biological reaction to one specific acoustic stimulus. Section 2. Neuroscience of Vocal Intimacy. So what's actually happening beneath your skull when you put your headphones on? Well, to truly understand this feeling, we have to look directly at the brain's neurological wiring. It all starts with emotional processing. This is basically the neural mechanism your brain uses to constantly evaluate and respond to acoustic triggers in your environment. Normally, a loud, belted pop song engages our sensory processing with a really high degree of energy to stimulate us. But a soft, whispered tone, that bypasses those usual sensory defenses entirely. It slips right past the brain's alert systems and directly engages the deeper emotional processing centers. It perfectly mimics the acoustic signature of safety. Now, what's really interesting about this is how that feeling of safety directly activates the brain reward system. This is a neural network perfectly designed to release dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, in response to comforting or pleasurable stimuli. Because the extreme intimacy in her voice mimics the exact frequency and volume of a trusted friend whispering a secret directly to you, your brain biologically rewards you for experiencing it. It all comes down to a perfect storm of neurological triggers. First, by defying auditory expectation, being incredibly quiet when pop music tells us to be loud, she forces our brains to pay much closer attention. Second, this commands deep involuntary focus. You literally have to lean in mentally just to hear her. And third, this simulates extreme physical proximity. Your brain is essentially tricked by these tiny acoustic cues into completely dropping its evolutionary guard to receive comfort. But here's the thing. Knowing that the brain reacts this way is one thing. Capturing lightning in a bottle, or in this case, capturing profound human intimacy on a hard drive, is a completely different challenge. So how do you physically engineer an auditory illusion that is so convincing it tricks millions of brains all at the exact same time? Section 3. The architecture of silence. Let's move to how this builds, because the construction of this intimacy in the recording booth relies on 3 very rigid acoustic steps. Step 1. Ultra-close microphone recording. The microphone isn't just near her, it's practically touching her lips. Step 2 is a highly controlled whisper singing technique. She maintains the pitch and the melody without ever fully engaging the vocal cords for projection. And step 3 is extreme dynamic vocal control, ensuring that even the tiniest breath or a really subtle sigh is captured with absolute crystal clarity. But the real secret ingredient? It actually isn't just the vocals. It's weaponized silence. If you listen to her production, like the stark, empty beats of a song like Bad Guy, there is an incredibly deliberate use of negative space. Instead of layering dozens of loud instruments to fill up the track, the production remains starkly, almost uncomfortably minimal. By surrounding that ultra-close whispered vocal with fast, empty sonic space, the perceived closeness of her voice is artificially amplified. The total silence around her makes the whisper feel monumental. And this brilliantly illustrates that acoustic illusion of distance. Think about a traditional belting pop singer. They create a perceived distance of feet or sometimes even yards away from you, the listener. But with Billie's close mic technique, that perceived distance collapses entirely. It actually rivals the acoustic footprint of a spoken secret whispered directly into your ear. The microphone effectively becomes a surrogate for your own eardrum. Section 4. Psychology of extreme closeness. So what happens to the listener's mind when an artist invades their personal sonic space so completely? Well, it creates this intense phenomenon known as psychological closeness. This is a listener's emotional perception of a deeply intimate one-on-one bond with a creator, despite the fact that they are separated by thousands of miles and digital screens. Because the primitive parts of the human brain really struggle to differentiate between simulated acoustic proximity and actual physical proximity, your brain interprets her close mic technique as someone singing exclusively and directly to you. This completely redefines the listening experience. It transforms a track that's being massively consumed by millions of people globally into an incredibly isolating, deeply personal event. It's no longer a performance meant for a crowded arena. It becomes a private conversation. And in a world that is hyper-connected, yet somehow incredibly lonely, this simulated private conversation offers a profound, truly therapeutic escape. Which brings us to a really fascinating threshold. We've broken down the vocal cords, the dopamine, the microphones, the whole shebang. But looking at the bigger picture, why does an explainer on a pop star's vocal technique actually matter for how we fundamentally understand modern human connection? Section 5. How music changes the brain. So the crucial point is that we are witnessing a perfect, almost unprecedented convergence here. Neuroscience, acoustic physics, and deep psychological longing have all intersected flawlessly in this one specific style of music. It proves that we don't just listen to music to be entertained anymore. We use it to self-medicate, to regulate our nervous systems, and to simulate the deep interpersonal intimacy that we biologically crave. We often think of revolutionary music as loud, rebellious, and earth-shattering. But perhaps the most radical thing a voice can do today is simply offer a quiet place to hide. Because sometimes, music doesn't change the world. It changes the way your brain experiences it. And that intersection, right where frequency becomes feeling and sound literally becomes psychology, is exactly where the true mystery begins. Until next time, keep listening closely.